G'day, g'day, g'day. Mathematical KM here. Remember, their initials, not a title. Keith Malumbi. Weighing in at 1450. This is the eighth round of the Canberra Chess Club Championship. Playing Simon, and Simon is pretty close to 150 points uphill. So we'll see how we go, and what it's worth, I think this is something like the 89th hippo. Don't know what we'll do when we get to the 100th one. Here we go. Let's hope we do get to 100 hippos in this, the year of the hippo. Okay, so let's go for that. Almost this one could have just been started at the 10th move, because we do get the full thick-skinned hippo setup. And see, this would be an interesting one to show to and ask Simon Riddell, the chess giant, about. Typically, you go for the less defended of these two pawns, and you go for a pawn that doesn't have major pieces directly behind it, of which there are none. And let's see, this one is defended by two, including a queen, and this one a rook and a knight. And also, interestingly, it's almost like it's a hippo is coming up against some sort of a cousin or some other variant that trying to be hyper-modern as well with the double fianchettos, but with his knights and front pawns further down the board. So it's going to be an interesting ride. Let's see how we go. One of the things to worry about when you've got bishops looking at each other is you tend to want to move something, like he's done for castling. You don't want to leave these bishops hanging. It leaves you open for tactics. And in fact, best move here was actually castling as well. Now that bishop's covered. He's going with first principles. He's developed his knights and bishops, and he's got his two rooks into the middle, and they're best moves. My thought, and that's an inaccuracy, but it's in Simon's course, there's something to do when white hasn't thrown anything directly at you, and I'm thinking that rook, as well as protecting that bishop, is going to let me make a battery aimed at his light bishop. And that was interesting, and that's brought it to point 3. Now, I know that typically in the hippo, you just lock it up. But I thought if he takes, I can take, and then I've, in a funny old way, I've swapped a centre pawn for a flank pawn, and my light bishop is still powerful, and it's about to get to battery. So, and it was interesting that this idea, it's not always when I come up with an idea, but this idea was best. There you go. And that's given the edge to black, with that very typical human move of just taking the pawn. So there are questions about, should I just take the knight up front? And then if I do, what happens if he takes that one and it's threatening the knight? And I thought this threat is still going to be there after I take back with the c-pawn. So that's what I did. And it was best, and we're maintaining our -1/2 to black. And that's what, move 14 against 150 points uphill in rating. Let's see if we can maintain not the rage, but the concentration and the evaluation. Now that's interesting. Why has he done it? What did Sauron do? Why did Sauron do it? I know it's Simon, not Sauron, but you get the Voldemort to younger viewers. He now has two pieces, including the king, protecting the bishop, so I cannot just take the bishop. But it's at this point that, you know, if I can manage to take that knight where it is, then it's going to ruin the pawn structure in front of his king. And I'm talking you through a little bit of, and I know I said no hope chess, Keith. This was a bit of hope chess, and it was rightly smacked down. What we have is, if I move a knight here and take, he takes, and then I can take in there. No doubt he'll get another piece in there, but even if I get a clean swap of the light bishops, I'll be happy with that. I think the light bishop's more important to him, and the dark bishop's more important to me, for what it's worth. But I will go to showing you at this point, just on the basis of what I was saying about the bishops, of course, just taking the bishops off now, and he ends up with a fianchetto king, or takes his knight back in. Really doesn't matter. With the knight back in is the suggested move. So I could take the bishops off. Knight to f6 is just bringing another piece, and then perhaps getting ready. And g5 is move your knight. Your knight's not going to be protecting that bishop anymore, and that would leave him just going back to where he came from, which would be a pretty good win. Of course he wouldn't do that. He would take, if I move the pawn forward, he'd take me. My queen's threatened. I'd take him. And then the knight would have to come back to where the bishop was. That was a lot of arrows. That's the suggested. Almost looks like it's going to win a piece, because if he just played it here, the bishop can take it, and if he takes back with the bishop, the queen, I'll get two pieces for one. So he wouldn't do that. If I do this, he'd need to take mine. I have to forced to take back, and then the knight comes back to me in there. But it would be a knight here with a pawn pretty much being better than that knight. Much, much better. As it is, let's have a look at what I did do. And yeah, it is a mistake. And that is on the hopeful basis of he'll let me destroy his pawns in front of his king. That's just not going to happen. What does Simon do? Well, comes as a miss. Knight takes f5 was better. I mean, I can't see that it's going to make a lot of difference. And here I can keep the edges black if I take back with the queen. I really wasn't sure. Should I take with the queen? Should I take with the rook? And finding a hard time explaining why that's nearly 0.9 difference. But I've gone with the rook. He's taken, which stops me from taking him, and this was perhaps another key and vital mistake should have been more important than the difference it's given. Taken towards the middle, this becomes a semi-open file, and there's no rooks or queens or anything anywhere near it, and I've got the bishop there anyway. That would be not bad. Taking this way, it may come back to haunt me, that file. And I've taken in the wrong direction. It's called it good, but yeah. Okay, he's brought his knight in. What can he do with that knight? How is it covered? Can I get rid of the thing? Let's offer to swap it off. That was the best move. Okay, and this should be able to give the edge back to me. So let's take a look at what was the thinking here. I know just off the top of my head that if a king is 4, it's very difficult for that knight to get a check in on that king. And having the king here is one of the typical moves. So you've got the bishop and the king for 2 protectors on that pawn. And a king here, the bit of granite on that diagonal as well. So king to h7, best move played. We've got that edge to black again, minus 0.4. His best move at the moment, let's have a look at what he should have done. It's often good to look at that as well. Is moving the queen to d3 or knight to c6. I think that may be played. Or f3. Just bringing his pawns forward. Okay, and I should be able to capitalise on this. He's taken one of the squares away for his knight, but he has given himself this outpost. Title of this video may well be the White Knight Thorn in My Side, being him. But it was a mistake. Ah, that's beautiful. I saw this outpost for my knight threatening the queen a move too late. But if it was played right now, then it's threatening the queen. And the rook will be able to grab the knight. Let's get my picture out of the way a bit and take a look at the small... If I put the knight forward, he has to go down the exchange to keep protecting that knight, otherwise he just loses it for nothing. I take... Then he can swap the bishops off. And the game goes on, but that's like with that -1 to black. That, perhaps, and with this tournament coming up, the Vikings Weekender, not this weekend but next, the sort of, you only get your opportunity once against some of these players. That was my chance. I missed it. And that's 0.9 positive to white. Wasn't the best move. They let him get his knight away to a nice safe place. Knight e4 was best, but it was a lot better last time, I'll tell you that. This time he can just move the queen out of the way and there's no rook coming in and grabbing the knight. And that knight gets the title for the video. So that was the big... I thought there was a different pivotal moment, but really the next pivotal moment is where the game was lost. But just there, if I'd picked up on that tactic, that would have been where the game could have been won. Anyway, let's keep going. I thought this wasn't bad. And it was designed to leave me with a bishop, not a knight. But at the end of the day, with how painful this cemented in knight was, maybe that wasn't the right strategy. Just in terms of a strategy working, there you go, knight for a bishop. But this bishop can never threaten that knight in that outpost. And this knight, with its octo, was just probably the MVP for the game that night. So he's looking to double his rooks and also threaten the bishop. Bishop comes back, the rooks are doubled. And that was where the game was lost. I was thinking, protected by the pawn, I can try and fix my structure. Really, and I had been thinking, if he comes to threaten my bishop, I can go here. Very sneaky move, pinning the rook so it can't move. But Octo Knight says no. So f4 is best. And at the end of the day, what do? I just can't. If I move the bishop, then there's two rooks aimed at this rook, which is only protected by a queen. It's just, he'd take, if I took back, he'd take back, and it would, no, that would be bad. And the best move was f-pawn forward. He goes up a piece. I fix the pawns. So can I do anything with the pawns? Threatening the base of the chain. The rook. Just playing around this knight is just painful. That was the only rook. Like that one couldn't go there, for example. He brings his queen across. This one's hanging at the moment. We put it forward. Okay, so now he's got the queen and the pawn on it. I've only got a pawn. Queen in. That's stopping me from getting my queen to here, which would have been lined up on his king, pinning that knight. So, nice move. Okay, let's try and... We're down a minor piece, but we do have some extra pawns, and they're passed pawns. See if we can't make something out of nothing. Okay, c4. Now he's got the queen and the pawn on there. What can I do? Best thing I can do is just take. And he takes the queens off, which makes sense. Got the rook to the second rank. He says, okay, what you gonna do? When he comes for you, check. King forward. Okay, there's now no way he can protect that pawn. But that was an excellent move. This is another major point in the game. And at this point, yep, sure, I can win that pawn. Nice. What can Sauron do after his last move? Check here is going to force my king backwards. We're rapidly approaching the point of the game where you're going to want active kings. So how can I diffuse that idea? And ideas like king to g7. Let's have a look at these, the top three moves. Well, we've got g5, which is actually going to help with various ideas for attacking in there. And giving g5 gives the king, he can come forward instead of backwards, and can't be checked again by the rook, at least. If that had been played, that was the best move. Rook to f8, not so sure about that. Or h5, much like g5, gives the king a forward square. Letting the king come forward and not go backwards is the best idea. Inaccuracy. King is forced backwards. Knight comes in. Knight is threatening the G-pawn. And it's also threatening the F-pawn if I come here. Now, I've got some vague hopes of what if I get my G-pawn to here, keeping his king out. Who knows? We'll see what computer thinks of G5 is best. He takes the F-pawn. G4 is good. Computer wanted me to play the check first. Interesting. Maybe because I don't quite have the time to get that check in. If he's on his game, and he was on his game tonight. So now I can't get that rook to there. Knights are tricky. Anybody told you that knight was the MVP? Thought about what his rooks could do to muck this around, and it wasn't that much, but damn it, saw that after I'd played, forking the two rooks, and he's played it. That was my best move. If he just takes this one, I can take that one and it's check, and his king can't come at me that way. It might be interesting, but he's instead come all the way down there. It does let me, the capture comes with check, so I get to not lose one of my rooks when the rooks were forked by a knight, so that's something. And he's on clean up on aisle E. Get another pawn. That was a blue. Probably could have kept fighting at, plus 5.8 to white with a move like rook to d6, which would be giving up the pawn. It's all kind of over. So I tried to protect the pawn. It's mate in 3. And he's, again, on his game. At the moment, that'll be mate. Only way of stopping that is like just making it take one move longer. Putting the rook there. And really, that is when I shook hands. I could play rook to g8 and then he takes, but all over, bar the shouting. So there was a couple of key moments and showing what I've got to work on in middle game analysis, but let's take a look at pretty even fight, relatively deep. That's like 25 moves in. But let's... Computer's saying 88 to 80. A miss, some mistakes, no blunders on either side. 2350 to 2100. Take it with a pinch of salt. 94 to 95. I came out of the opening in front. Like that a lot. 84 to 80 in the middle game. That was, we spotted those 3 spots, 3 critical moves. Got to work on the middle game. And the end game, 90 to 75. But it was, sometimes you're just pushing it uphill once the middle game's been lost in that epic battle. Well, I will talk to you guys with the next video. We will get to 100 hippos this year because we'll get 2 normal games next week, followed by, I think, 7 games on that weekend. So be ready for some more hippos coming your way soon. Bye for now.